Yo, what is everybody? It's me, Weep here, back with a brand new What If video. And today we'll be doing part 4 for What If Subaru was Sukuna's vessel. Now, it's been a while since my last What If, but I hope you guys do enjoy this, and I'm sorry it's taken so long. I'm trying to get back into making videos more regularly because I took a little break, and that's not really good for the YouTube algorithm, and also for me in general, I guess, and just habits. But anyway, I guess that's long enough of an intro. If you do like what I got going on, I'd really appreciate it if you do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you want more videos from me, since we just hit 20,000 subscribers on the channel, which is amazing. Thank you all so much. And I'll be having a video actually about my 20K special and what's going on with my character's OC fan fiction and original story, which will be coming out along with his name reveal and a bit of his character backstory, so you guys know who you're looking at right now, I guess, actually is, and why he is everything, I guess. This also has stuff to do to tie in with the Demigod series, Anti-Chakra, and Ultra Instinct Naruto. So for those who have been following the lore, I hope you guys are excited for that. Anyway, let's get into the what if itself. What if Subaru was Sukuna's vessel? Since it's been a while, I'll do a quick refresher before we get into the actual story itself, but basically what happened last time is we discovered that Subaru and Sukuna's souls are not quite fused together just yet. And we don't know why, but for some reason Subaru and Sukuna don't share the same experience. Whenever a return by death occurs, Subaru is the only one to remember the events, causing Sukuna to not be in the same page as Subaru. This will probably cause some problems in the future as well, but luckily Sukuna can read Subaru's memories, since if you remember during Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1, we see Sukuna do this with Itadori Yuji, and so the same situation can happen here, meaning we have some clarification, but it also means that Subaru and Sukuna will have to have a sort of meeting between any planning that they might have to do. Anyway, we can suppose that perhaps the soul fracturing, as I'll call it, would have to do with Sukuna only having 1/20th of his soul connected to Subaru, meaning that he's missing most of his being still, which would be his other fingers. Currently, Subaru has just respawned back at the 2-week point where he had just arrived at the mansion last night, with him and his meeting with Roswell, as well as just the rest of everyone at the Roswell estate having not occurred yet, at least in this new time. This would also be the first time that Subaru has ever died and restarted, meaning that Subaru doesn't even know what is going on. This is his first experience with Return by Death due to Sukuna's interference and Subaru having much more power, since he had been given cursed energy even while he was on Earth back in his timeline, meaning that Subaru had never died before, obviously. Subaru would now, at this point, just be realizing what's going on, and he'd still be shocked, as he had screamed when he woke up, scaring Ram and Rem, as you see the two of them holding each other's hands while quivering. As soon as Subaru would see Rem, he'd jump out of bed as he runs away, scared and terrified from what he had just seen, Rem ripping him apart with her spiked chain ball, ripping him into pieces, his flesh mangled, blood all over the grass as he looked up, seeing red. Subaru would see this image of Rem in his mind and would be terrified, as he would go running out of the room, slamming into the wall before he continues running, eventually finding the door that would lead into Beatrice's room in the Great Library, where he would then close the door and sit against it, shaking as he thinks about what's going on. Beatrice would flick her eyes up from her book as she notices Subaru shaking by the door. Sukuna would already begin to realize what's going on, as he's looking through Subaru's memories from within his portion of Subaru's body. As he sees Subaru dying from that blue-haired girl, he'd start laughing, saying that what he did was hilarious. He wished he didn't forget it. It must have to do with her. Sukuna would grit his teeth as we see inside Subaru as he looks pissed off, staring over at the other side of Subaru's inner soul, as we can see her sitting there, Satella. And Satella and Sukuna are both just staring each other down, the two of them being forced roommates in Subaru's soul. Of course, this being unknown to Subaru at this point. Anyway, Beatrice would then say in an annoyed tone asking Subaru to leave, saying if he's done shaking by the door, she's getting distracted from his pitiful state. Beatrice would close her book as she opens her palm, preparing to use a wind blast and force Subaru out of the door. Subaru would turn around just as he sees the big crash of wind, slamming into him as he gets sent flying out of the door and crashing through the window on the opposite side of the hall. Subaru began to fall down to the leaves below as he crashes into the bushes, head first. We would see Amelia from the courtyard as she then notices Subaru falling from the window with his head sticking up out of the ground. Amelia and Puck would then run over to Subaru as we see him shaking and his hand twitching. As he would then notice Amelia, he'd then stand up rather fast and brush himself off, now removing the dirt. Puck would then snicker and say he has a piece of leaf stuck in his hair, as Subaru would flick his eyes upward, noticing it. Thanks. Subaru would quickly brush off the leaves as Amelia would ask what he was doing. Subaru's first comment would be that he was practicing stringless bungee jumping, which there was no response from Amelia to, before he realizes that bungee jumping doesn't exist in this world. What a crowd killer, he'd think. Then Subaru would say he was pushed out the window by Beatrice when he entered the Great Library, and Amelia would realize saying that Beatrice can be a bit... How do I put this? Amelia would try and say, with Subaru finishing her statement saying, tsundere. Amelia would say she doesn't know what that means, but it's probably the right term. Subaru would then hold his hand behind his head scratching as he says, and asks Amelia how she's doing today. Amelia would then ask what he means, with Subaru then commenting on the previous fight, being Elsa Granhirt. We could see a flashback grayed out of Sukuna completely abusing the Bowel Hunter, and then back to reality. Amelia would then say she had no idea that Subaru could do those things, and also asked why he changed his tone of voice. Subaru would then say because it just made him look cool. Before Subaru could secure his status of Virginity Master any longer, Sukuna would then pop out as we see his mouth on Subaru's hand say, "Because it was me, you dimwit." Subaru would then suddenly cover his hand with his mouth, saying he's also a ventriloquist. Amelia would giggle, asking what that's all about as she points to Subaru's hand. Puck would actually offer to help here, as he would then fly over by Subaru, grabbing his hand with his tail, holding it up. He would point out to Amelia saying that just like how she and him are partners, spirit partners, Subaru has his own contract with a spirit, he would say. To make it simpler, he would basically explain that Subaru was a user of spirit arts as well. Puck, as we already know, knows about cursed energy, and would cover for Subaru in this manner. He would then explain that that guy and Subaru probably switched consciousnesses when they were battling against Elsa, and that's why. Amelia would be extremely intrigued with this, asking Subaru how he started learning spirit arts. Subaru would then raise his head, he says, "Hell no," slapping himself on the side of the face. Amelia would jump a little before laughing, saying it's like he's doing some sort of skit. Subaru would then explain that this guy inside his head is really annoying, and if he could get rid of him, he would, Subaru would say, then covering the hand again. Sukuna, with a muffled voice, would then say, "Hey, that's being cold for the guy who saved your life, you know." Subaru would laugh as he then uncovers the hand, saying, I guess so. Amelia and Subaru having cleared up where Sukuna was and who Sukuna is would make things a lot easier going forward, provided that Subaru doesn't die again and reset everything. Anyway, speaking of which, Subaru would then ask Amelia if she wanted to join him in his calisthenics in the morning. Subaru would then stretch in the garden as he moves around, saying people from his country love doing this. Amelia would join him along with Puck, while Sukuna would bully Subaru, telling him he looked like an idiot from the inside of his head. Subaru would say, yeah, laugh it up, as Subaru himself would be thinking about how he's going to deal with Rem. What are they going to do? After they finished stretching, Subaru would ask Amelia if he'd be meeting the master of the mansion anytime soon, with Amelia nodding, saying that they were actually going to have lunch together. Subaru would nod, now knowing that everything, at least in events, would take place similarly to how they did in the original, when he had done the same exact routine last week. Anyway, as lunchtime would approach, Subaru would then enter into the dining hall, now occupied along with Amelia and Puck by Rem, Ram, and Roswal, who would be entering the room from behind. This time, however, Subaru would not make fun of Roswell and call him a clown, causing their situation to be much less awkward than the first time. As Subaru would sit down greeting the master of the mansion, Master Roswell himself, we would see Ram and Rem staring at Subaru. Subaru would offer an apology to Ram and Rem, explaining that he had had a horrible nightmare last night and it was really scary. So when he first jumped up and saw the two who he hadn't met yet, he thought he was still in his nightmare and then ran away. Ram and Rem would then ask, as they think to each other, saying, Sister, sister, do you think we're really that much of monsters? Yes, I think that's what he's saying. Sisters, Ram and Rem, would continue their little act, and Subaru would then say, I said I'm sorry, okay? Roswell would then do a small ahem, as the two sisters would stop teasing their guest. Anyway, Roswell would then speak in his accentuated voice to Subaru, just like the first time. Subaru, in rewards for saving Amelia and helping her find her lost insignia before the royal selection, I have decided to give you any wish you may desire. Name it, anything. Subaru would say that he would want to be offered a job as a butler at the mansion, explaining to Roswell that he currently has no job and that it'd be great if he could work somewhere like here where he could learn more about the country as well as have a comfortable living situation. Roswell would then listen to his plea and also his wish, and would decide that this was reasonable, with him accepting Subaru's request to work at the mansion, just like the first timeline. Subaru would then be under the care of Ram and Rem as he began his first day on the job learning how to be a butler. Subaru would already have had his 2 weeks of experience from his first run-through, so he would actually look much more experienced than he would let on, with Subaru being able to cut the potatoes just the way that Ram would have taught him, and Rem also examining him, seeing that how he can handle things much easier than a new maid or butler would actually be able to. This will also lead to Rem's suspicions of him being a spy, even more so than what had happened in the original timeline. Anyway, Ram, Subaru, and Rem would also be tasked with going to the village and picking up groceries just like they normally would, which would be where Subaru would have gotten poisoned without having any effect the first time, due to the Maw Beast. Subaru would go with Rem, and this time, Rem would be the one to pet the dog instead of Subaru, as she would get bitten by the dog. Subaru, after saying goodbye to the children as well as the rest of the villagers in the village, would go back with Rem to the mansion, with Rem being unaware of her current circumstances, meaning that she would die within 24 hours, just like what would have happened in the original. The 2 weeks near point would be coming close, and so this would be when Subaru would be preparing for Rem to attack him, as he waits in his room, armed. But nothing would happen. Subaru would then walk out of the room, as he would hear crying. Subaru would run over to Rem's room. We would see Ram laying on the ground in tears, seeing Rem on the bed, having been killed. We would see Amelia and Roswell, as well as Beatrice, having been sent there to analyze the situation, as Subaru would have no idea what happened, shocked. Ram would be in a state of anger and pain, seeing her beloved sister having died, and no enemy, no one to blame it on, no cause. And this is when she would spot Subaru, asking him if he knew what happened and the cause of Rem's death, as she would be in pain, tears streaming down her face. Subaru would be speechless, shocked as he's just staring at Rem. This would lead to her thinking that Subaru was the cause of Rem's death, just like the original ReZero, as she would now spin out into a rage. Suddenly, a flipped color version of the same spiked bald chain that would have killed Subaru in the original would appear seemingly out of thin air into Ram's hand. Subaru's instant fear in recognizing this would only convince her that it was his fault and he had killed Rem, as she would then throw the chained attack, trying to strike Subaru. Subaru, having dealt with this before already, would use cursed energies and then slams the ball off his fist, taking no damage as it then goes hurling into the wall. Subaru would tell Ram that he didn't do it, as she would then chase after him in her blind rage, her using wind magic chasing after Subaru. Subaru would exit the mansion and he continues running up the hill, with Ram close behind as the two would then get into a fight. Ram would throw another wind attack, to which Subaru would respond, turning as he then uses his cursed energy. Using his fist as he strikes with enough force to block the wind attack, cutting through the air, he would have a small cut on his hand, with cursed energy defending him, as now Ram and Subaru would get into a bit of a fist fight, with Subaru throwing punches at Ram, bruising her over and over again, while Ram would continue to strike him with a chain, causing him to bleed and cut, as the two would be fighting like wild animals. Subaru would actually be able to hold his own in this version, and this would be when he'd be able to tap into something that he hadn't even tried to. This Subaru has had cursed energy for 6 years already, ever since Sukuna had inhabited his body. Subaru currently has 2 fingers from Sukuna inside of him, the one he found in his world, and one of which was in the ReZero world back in that shop that Sukuna ate, meaning that he has 2/20ths of Sukuna's power, which has already enhanced his own. And since he's been having Sukuna within him for 6 years, the one finger had already completely merged with Subaru, meaning a lot of the techniques from that 1/20th would have already been imprinted into Subaru. As Subaru would throw one more curse energy punch, this would be when Rem would use Al-Huma, using her wind attack, the strongest wind magic she can. This connect would be the perfect range. As Subaru would slam his cursed energy directly into the magic, the two would respond, as Subaru would have accidentally discovered the Black Flash. Using the Black Flash, he would glimpse into cursed energy itself, similar to how Itadori Yuji would have with his first experience, having had Toto tell him about it. As the Black Flash would appear, it would shatter through Rem's magic and smash into her face, causing Rem to fall to the ground as her brain would explode over the ground, the amount of cursed energy having been such a higher amount she couldn't handle it, as Rem would die, half her face in shock, with tears still running down it. As Subaru comes out of that stage, seeing what he had done, his understanding of cursed energy would have increased highly, as he would have seen its true nature, having actually done a Black Flash accidentally. Sukuna would be laughing, as the Black Flash would have killed the other sister. Subaru couldn't take it, as he turns, seeing Rem and Ram's bodies laying on the ground, as it would then flash back to Ram dead. "I have to figure this out." Subaru would turn over as he looks to the edge, seeing it, the cliff edge below being filled with dark rocks and spikes. Subaru would turn as he runs and jumps, falling down the side of the cliff. As he falls and stabs himself on all the rocks, killing him instantly. Sukuna wouldn't interfere, as he already knows that he won't actually die. As Subaru would then wake up in bed, he wouldn't scream this time. Now, for those of you saying that Subaru wouldn't kill himself at this point in order to save Rem and Ram, I think you're wrong in that this version of Subaru is much stronger than our original Subaru, both physically and mentally, because he has his confidence still. Something that held back the Subaru in the original ReZero is a lack of confidence that stemmed from the shadow of his father. But having Sukuna awakened his cursed energy at a young age, Subaru was always better than everyone else, and it never was overshadowed in physical power. And this is one of the biggest reasons why Subaru felt like he was a top-tier player, and even strengthened his ideal that he was the main character of his own life, which is why Subaru wouldn't be afraid to do this. And it also gives him this insane main character psychological plot that he still has in the original ReZero, but this time it hasn't been shattered yet, causing him to realize that he's powerless. Instead, he thinks he can do anything, which is why he thought that if he did this, he could save both of them and fix everything. As Subaru wakes up, he would greet the two of them, saying he must have been awakened by angels, which is kind of ironic considering they're demons. The two would be shocked at how forward and confident he was, having just met them. This time, Subaru would think, "I'll find what happened. I'll find how Rem died, and I'll protect everyone." As Subaru runs out the door to go and find Beatrice, as well as Amelia. If you guys want to see the next part to What If Subaru was Sukuna's vessel, make sure to slap that like button, comment down below what you thought, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I'll be making another part soon, hopefully sooner, at least in the 2 months that I had before this one. And along with that will also be my 20k subscriber special, which I'll have coming out, which will be introducing my new fan fiction and everything else that'll be going on in that. So I will see all of you guys in that video, or in the next video you watch them on, I guess. I don't know. But I'll see you all next time. Thanks, and goodbye.